Does that not lend you to the conclusion that there were better opportunities for you and bigger outcomes that you could have had when you look back retrospectively? Maybe not at the time, but when you look back on it.
Yeah, possibly. There were things I could have done. I could have joined Spurs in 1990. Could have joined Liverpool in 92, I think it was. Could have joined Chelsea in 1995. But
when you say could have, I mean, were there offers in for you?
Yeah.
I nearly
signed for Spurs when I was 21.
Right.
Yeah, I actually signed a contract to join Spurs and changed my mind before the two clubs.
Who was the manager?
Agreed fee, Terry Venables. Yeah, in 1990. So I often say this when people say, how come you didn't get so many caps for England? And
you think it's because of that?
In 1990, when I turned Spurs down, Terry was manager, and when my agent went back to him and said, "No, Matt's not coming," my agent rang me back and said, "Terry wants to speak to you," because I hadn't spoken to Terry, just representatives at Spurs, and I went, "No, I don't want to speak to him. I've made my mind up."
Right.
And then in 1995, when Chelsea tried to buy me, Glenn Hoddle was manager.
Right.
And the exact same thing happened.
Okay.
And I went, I've made my mind up. I don't want to speak to him. Now, That was hard for me because Glenn was my hero as a kid. I was a Spurs fan growing up. Glenn Hoddle was my absolute idol. I based everything I did on a football pitch.
On Hoddle.
On Glenn Hoddle. And Liam Brady to a certain extent as well. I wanted my left foot to be decent like Liam Brady's as well. So those two guys were my heroes. So to turn him down and go, no, I don't want to talk to him, that was quite a big thing. And then he became the next England manager as well. So and both of them kind of gave me a couple of opportunities, but not many. The one thing that I would say when people say you didn't get as many caps, it was a lot harder, I think, back in the 90s. We had a lot more really good forward thinking English players. So, you had Peter Beardsley, Teddy Sheringham, people like Robbie Fowler and Stan Collymore and Ian Wright and Les Ferdinand, all these guys that probably, you look at their ability and a lot of them would say, I should have had more caps. Andy Cole, the amount of goals that he scored and the caps that he got. So there was a lot of talent around there, and obviously Gaza, and Gaza was probably a big part of that. The disappointing thing from my point of view is that I was given 3 starts for England. I got 8 caps, but only 3 of them were starts. One of those games was abandoned after 27 minutes because I played in the game in Dublin.
Yeah.
And the other 2 appearances were 3 years apart. That's not really any great opportunity to show what you can do at international level.
So what do you attribute that to them?
I attribute that to the team that I was playing at the time. I think there was definitely a big club bias in the 90s. And I also attribute that to the reputation that I was given by the media of being a luxury, lazy player. Now, I was labelled that very early on, unfit. And it's very difficult when you get that reputation as a teenager to shake that off for the rest of your career because you get labelled that. And it's, I always say to people, how could I have been lazy if in 540 appearances for a team, for the majority of that were in the bottom half of the table, 540 appearances, I scored 209 goals, probably created another 100 or so. I couldn't do that. If I was lazy, when we were in the bottom of the table in the second week of January.
Does it annoy you, and did it annoy you at the time, being called lazy?
I thought it was unfair.
Yeah.
But you can't fight against the machine, so I took it.
209 goals in the amount of games that you played. I think it was 165 of them at 443 league games, something like that, wasn't it? If you divided that, prorated it by 38 games in the Premier League, you'd be scoring 14 goals a season, every season, which is attributed as great success for Jermaine Defoe being a prolific goal scorer in the Premier League. It's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? How people can make figures represent it one way and yet characterise people in another.
It is, but it was a very different time back then. We weren't so much stats based back then. It was very opinion based.
Yeah.
I was a 21. The year I won the Young Player of the Year in 1990, I scored 24 goals that season. I was 21 years of age, scoring 24 goals. Now, if you bring that forward to today's football, and you put an English midfielder, and at 21 years of age scoring 24 goals in the season, do you think he would be in the England squad?
You would. On the balance of probability, you'd find it difficult not to argue with the fact that he should or shouldn't be.
Okay, so during that season, I didn't even get a mention for being in an England squad, scoring 24 goals at the age of 21. Not a mention.
You've got an interesting philosophy Because I half agree with the idea of what a winner looks like, which is the ability to go out and do something, only do what you want to do because you enjoy it and the ability to have an opportunity to have to do it. But I also think you've got to define it by some form of meritocracy.
Yeah,
Right?
I think.
Did you enjoy being a sort of I suppose the embodiments of a big fish in a small pond? Was that part of your motivation?
100%. And I've always admitted that. I've always enjoyed being the small fish in the big pond, or the big fish in the small pond. And that's something that is part of my makeup. So what people have to realise about me when they talk about winners, you assume that everybody goes into football because they want to win trophies.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I always viewed football as an entertainment industry.
All right.
And my first thought when I go out on a football pitch is, I want to entertain people today. Now, on the back of that, entertaining people for me is about creating and scoring goals.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people go and watch football matches for. So on the back of that leads to results. But that wasn't my primary motivation. My primary motivation was to enjoy myself on a football pitch because I knew I was good at it, and I wanted to make people happy by watching me play football.
Did you think of yourself as a maverick?
Did I think of myself as a maverick? I knew I was different, yeah. I knew I was different. I knew I had a different mentality to a lot of people, and I knew I had a very different skill set to pretty much everybody I played with. But on the back of that, I was always the first person to admit that there was stuff that my teammates could do that I couldn't do. I needed them to be able to do their job for me to be able to do my job.
Do you think staying at Southampton, I mean, you've talked about it as being comfortable, because you're a ballsy character. You don't care what you say, and you stand by it, right?
Yep.
And the fact you didn't want to talk to Venables and you didn't need to talk to Glenn Hoddle because you'd made your mind up shows a certain resilience and stubbornness and a belief in yourself and a fortitude to stay with what you think, and you're not necessarily there for turning.
Yeah.
Do you think staying at one club is beyond the comfortable side of things? Is it a combination of loyalty and comfort, or does it really move into the territory of a bit of a lack of ambition?
There was definitely a loyalty part of that. I always felt like I owed Southampton Football Club something. They gave me the opportunity to achieve my.
See, I like that. Yeah. It's a
Achieve
two-way
my
transaction,
dreams.
isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's a two-way transaction, yeah. Like the Ivan Toney situation now, which is the basis of Brentford want to stand by him and he needs to sign a new contract.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So there was always that. I always had that feeling that this football club gave me the chance to achieve my childhood ambitions. So that was always one thing. The other thing was the fans at Southampton Football Club were, right from the very first time I set foot on a pitch, were unbelievably good to me.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like I owed them something as well. But there was also that bit of me that was, happy to be in a comfortable situation at my football club where I knew I could play football the way that I wanted to play it. And I probably couldn't have done that if I'd have gone to a bigger club with bigger ambitions. I would have had to have towed the line a little bit more. I would have had to have probably taken things a lot more seriously than I actually did. And got that winning mentality instead of an entertaining mentality.
Do you think modern players, any of the things that you just said, pop into their psyche?
Don't think so. I think if it does, it would be a very, very rare thing to do. I think in this day and age, I think the word loyalty is kind of almost gone from football completely now. Yeah,
I mean, I've always had this feeling about loyalty that the fans are the ones that have the predominant loyalty, and even they sometimes desert the cause when it gets a bit tough. But I always felt that loyalty was based upon, if I give you a contract, and Matt Le Tissier played for me and I give you a 3-year contract, I expect you to do your very best for me for 3 years. And at the end of those 3 years, we part company or we don't part company. That's the end of it. And if you kiss the badge during the meantime, then fantastic. But realistically speaking, loyalty was a slightly misguided premise. But when you look at, say, the sentiment that you deployed, which was being a one-club man, you've had a few of them around. Tony Adams, Stephen Gerrard, John Terry, Ryan Giggs, and in Spain, Carlos Puyol. But why do you think it is so rare now?
I think the opportunities that come along with transfers are quite tempting in terms of the amount of money that you can make somewhere else.
Bosman rule.
One of the
that,
things, one of the things in my day that was probably the big difference now is that I could have, so back in the mid-90s when Chelsea tried to buy me, for example, I think I was on about, I don't know, but I was on about $2,000 a week, something like that. And if I'd have moved to Chelsea, I'd have probably gone maybe $10,000 a week.
Right.
So the jump is, it's quite a big jump.
5 times, yeah.
Relatively speaking, when you're talking about in today's terms, if I was at Southampton now, for example, and I was earning $40,000 a week, and Man City came in for me and offered me $250,000 a week. I mean, even that might have tested my loyalty.
Right.
That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
Of course, $2,000
to $10,000, and that's the other thing. I wasn't in football to become rich.